Hello. If you want to learn about how to assess the viability of the open source projects that you consume, then this presentation and practitioner guide is for you. If you haven't already watched the first presentation in this series, I recommend that you pause now and watch the video for part 1, the practitioner guide introduction. Evaluating project viability and the risk that comes with it is important because it can disrupt your business. It's also important to think about viability and risk as being on a continuum. Some projects are more or less viable across a variety of categories, and whether you should embrace a project and accept the risks that comes with it is a business decision and a strategic decision that you should also take how you're using the project into account. Looking at the viability of projects, especially the ones that have the potential to impact your business, is a good first step toward managing risk and reducing the chances of potential disruptions. The Assessing Viability Practitioner Guide looks at viability across 4 separate categories: compliance and security, governance, community, and strategy. It's particularly important to look at the viability of any open source projects that are critical for your ability to deliver products to your customers or users. This can include products that are built on top of an open source technology, or where those open source projects are integrated into your products or your infrastructure. If you couldn't easily swap that project or technology out with a drop-in replacement of something very similar, you should be assessing the viability of that project and understanding any risks that might come with it. One good way to evaluate the security of an open source project is with the OpenSSF scorecard, which contains a wealth of information about the security of a project beyond just the score. Defect resolution duration, lib years, and other dependency measures are also important because projects that are slow to fix vulnerabilities and update dependencies will be less secure, which makes them a less viable solution since you don't want to ship your products to customers if they contain open source projects with shoddy security practices. Licensing compliance is also critical, so it's important to look at the licenses used in an open source project. This is one aspect of viability that can make or break whether you can use the open source project at all or include it within your product. Additionally, some metrics are challenging to trace or visualize. The project's security policy documents should be reviewed, looking for a process that allows anyone to privately report vulnerabilities and for dealing with those reports quickly and efficiently. We leave flexibility in how we rank applications against tricky to gather metrics. For example, how many lib years is appropriate for a project will depend on how or where an application may run, how frequently it's updated, and these require thinking critically about lib years. This category is designed to look at several areas to see if the project is well governed and that the maintainers and other project leaders are taking good care of the project. These metrics look at things like issue inclusivity, which looks at whether issues are well labeled to make it easier for people to find something to work on. Responsiveness metrics like time to close, change request closure ratio, and issue age determine if maintainers are keeping up with contributions and responding to them in a timely manner. Lib years and release frequency indicate whether maintainers are keeping dependencies up to date and making sure that the updates and fixes land in a release in a timely fashion. In addition to the metrics, it's always a good idea to have someone read through the governance documents to look for any red flags, especially for projects that are critical for your products. You should also carefully consider the ownership of the project because projects owned by companies and individuals might be less viable and higher risk than ones that are under foundations. The community is a critical part of assessing the viability of an open source project. Is the community active and engaged in productive discussions around the project? Are they helpful when people have questions or problems? Are they welcoming for new contributors and new users? Do they treat each other with kindness and respect? Metrics like clones, forks, and project popularity don't tell you much about the health of a project, but they can indicate that there's interest in using and contributing to the project And projects with good adoption and an active community can be an indicator of viability, especially if these metrics are growing over time. Types of contributions is a particularly important type of metric for viability. Change requests and committers are a good start, but you should also look for a wide range of contributions happening beyond just the code. Things like documentation, community, accessibility, and more can show that you have a well-rounded community of people working on all aspects of the project, which improves viability. While there are general community metrics that can indicate whether a community is healthy, it's still a good idea to go beyond the metrics and have someone look at the community communication channels for inclusivity, because projects with a culture of treating each other with respect and kindness tend to be more viable because people will want to continue to contribute. Contributor absence factor, also sometimes called the bus factor or lottery factor, looks at contributor sustainability and whether a project is likely to continue if one or more people left the project. Elephant factor is a similar metric, but for organizations, and used along with organizational influence can give you a sense for how many organizations are involved in a project. If these numbers are high, with many people contributing and good organizational diversity, the project is more likely to be viable over the long term. But if contributions are made by a single person or people from a single company, you might want to think twice about whether this project is a viable solution for your organization. Programming language can also be a concern, especially for smaller organizations. If your employees are mostly familiar with Python, then a project written in Java might be very difficult to manage and contribute to if you find a bug. In this case, projects and languages your employees know well might be more viable for you to use. You should also look at whether the project requires a contributor license agreement or a CLA signature before contributing, because this can decrease viability, since the CLA often gives the controlling organization the ability to relicense that project or perform other rug pulls. The Assessing Viability Practitioner Guide has many more details, and I hope that it helps you assess the viability of the open source projects that you care the most about. And I hope you enjoy watching the other videos in this Practitioner Guide series. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you around the CHAOSS community.